Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time. Thank you, everybody that's here. Obviously, what we're going to be talking about today is really, really important for Nebraskans. It's really, really important that we get comfortable being uncomfortable, standing up for the values that have made Nebraska the greatest place to live in the history of civilization. And I will tell you that if anybody disrupts in this press conference like that, we have plenty of security. You'll be taken out and be taken out immediately. As I was saying, standing up for the values that make this state one of the greatest places in the history of civilization to live is really, really important. I think that, I'm not going to dwell on my last 15 days, but I will tell you the greatest advice I've gotten is Pillen, quit horsing around. But let me say on a serious note, when you have a life-giving experience, you have one of two choices. And I am more focused and more determined to do extraordinary things for the people of Nebraska. And you can be rest assured, standing up for our kids, standing up for moms, tops the list. The other thing I wanted to share is extraordinary moments as your governor. I had the privilege to be down at Mar-a-Lago last night and have dinner with the president-elect. And I think there are about 20 other governors. And obviously, what's really important for Nebraska is that we have personal relationships, that we know people on President Trump's team, and so that we, Nebraska, become a fly-to state, not a fly-over state, and that everybody making decisions know exactly how important and what goes on in Nebraska. The president, with everybody, asked me about my accident, and to get away from all the details, I said, well, Mr. President, the horse's name was Jack. And then I said, and Jack has a new name. It's Jackass. I might add name by the First Lady here. All right, well, let's get in the saddle and get to work here. So thank you everybody for being here. Highest priority, kids, taxes, agriculture, values, and that we protect our kids. It's a top priority. We're here to be talking about protecting school-age girls and women in female spaces. The Stand With Women Act is legislation that builds upon my executive order last year establishing a Women's Bill of Rights. It also builds on the legislation that Senator Kauth introduced last year. It's really simple, folks. Girls and women should not have to share locker rooms with boys and men, period. Period. Protecting female-only spaces is incredibly important because girls and women should have access to spaces where they are safe and secure, free from the pressure and the presence of biological males due to the potential of harassment or assault. We must protect these girls and women who have experienced and survived sexual assault. Can you imagine the trauma of being in a locker room or a restroom with a member of the opposite sex? It's beyond comprehension. Additionally, biological males should not share spaces designated for women due to inherent safety risks from physical differences between males and females, including strength and identity. Maintaining these spaces ensures the girls and women have areas where they can enjoy privacy and dignity without the pressure and presence of biological males. This is incredibly, incredibly simple from my seat. Suzanne and I have 3 granddaughters. Over my dead body, are they going to have to someday wake up and have men, boys in their locker room space, or compete or compete against it. When a person becomes of age and they have the desire to become something different, from my seat, I love that person like any other Nebraskan. It's incredibly important that we protect kids until they are at the age, and that we protect our girls. There's no place for competition. There's no place for the things that we're talking about. So the provisions in the Stand With Women Act are just simply common sense policies in a world sometimes where no common sense exists. So it's really important that we, again, have the courage to stand up. We all need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the young women who have put themselves out there. Yeah. And a couple of these ladies I've gotten to know a little bit over the last couple of years. And when I think of Jordy, when I think of Becca, you know, they're extraordinarily elite at their craft, but their character and who they are is at a whole different level than that, and their presence here says that. So I just can't say enough about Jordy Ball and Becca and Jennifer C. You guys are rock stars. We're really proud of you. So I want to thank Senator Kauth for introducing this legislation, and I would like to turn it over to Senator Kauth. Here we go.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I am so very proud to be able to introduce the Stand With Women Act. It is critically important that we actually make this stand. This act will cover everything the state is in charge of. That means our prison systems. That means our Department of Economic Development. That means our DHHS. That means all of our academics, all the way up through post-secondary. We have to be able to say that a woman is a woman and a man is a man, and there should be some places where each sex has privacy. And if we have designated something as, say, a women business-owned grant, we shouldn't have men be able to decide to be women and take that money. We shouldn't have men be able to decide to play a sport and take a scholarship, or to have an injury to a player. This is common sense. It astounds me that I have to introduce this bill. But there are at least 20 states across the country who have said, oh no, we fully think that anybody who wants to change their sex, which is a physical impossibility, can do it. If you think you're a woman, you sure are, and we'll embrace them all the way. That is not fair to anyone who is a woman. It's also not fair to men. So I am so very grateful. First of all, look at this crowd. I am so blessed and proud to have all of these senators standing behind me, behind this bill, and I'll let you know there are many more on the floor who actually couldn't come to the press conference because they're trying to make sure that there are no shenanigans on the floor of the legislature. So they are here with us in spirit. But I am so grateful for them for standing up with me and standing up for women. And I'm blown away by the courage of these young ladies. So we have Jordy Ball, Becca Alec, and this is Hannah Holtmeyer, and Hannah's going to speak to you a little bit about her experience when her sorority invited a man into a sorority. And then finally, our final speaker will be Jennifer Say, and she founded XXXY Athletics. It is the only sports apparel company that actually supports women being women. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Jordy Ball.
Thank you. I just want to say it's an absolute honor to be here with these strong women and these people of power who are willing to use their position to do what's right. But I just want to start by saying we have come such a long way since my childhood, and that was not a long time ago. I remember going to the public pool in Papillion, and when you showed up, you'd walk up to the front desk and check in, and you either went left or right, and each way led to a locker room, 1 women, 1 men. And at the young age of probably 7 or 8, I walked through there as fast as I could, because if I accidentally saw a woman showering or changing, I just felt so awkward and so uncomfortable, and I just wanted to get out of there. And then now at this day and age, I just stop for a moment and I think, what disturbance and trauma would have come over me if at that age, if I'm that embarrassed and awkward, like seeing another woman, had there been a man, or let alone a man watching me shower or me change. However, again, growing up, something like this, if it would have happened, it would have been considered criminal, and the people of power would have defended the child. But today, it's almost the opposite. We see those opposed to allowing men into women's sports locker rooms, restrooms, and prisons. We see the people opposed to it as the problem. So my question is just, in how this short amount of time have we gotten to this extreme? And I believe that a big part of the answer to that is just extremism across the board. There's been extreme demand, but there has also been extreme consequences for saying no to insanity that has been pushed upon us. And I believe that is why now we have a silent majority. A large majority of Americans know how morally screwed up this whole issue is, but they sit back because of the fear of labels, the fear of losing jobs, loss of security, loss of opportunity, the risk of putting their family in an unsafe or uncertain situation. Americans have been taught that it's easier to be quiet, and it's clearly gotten us to this point, but you would be surprised how hateful that the people all about love and acceptance get when I say I would not want to play sports against a man, or want my daughter changing in front of a man, or want women sharing prison cells with people who are in jail for sexual violence. But again, like, I have experienced hate for my views, and I don't really expect that to change. But again, that's never something that would steer me away from using my voice to stand up for what is right. And it makes me sad, honestly, because again, I talked about how people who are so vocal about love and acceptance, all human beings are creations of the Lord. Everybody's created and designed by the Father. But the difference is that I just don't think some people have let their hearts receive the love of Jesus Christ. And that is where I feel like a big difference is. So it's easy to get into yelling matches and just let anger fill you. But at the end of the day, it's a really sad thing. But at the end of the day, I still think that this is a very common sense issue, and both parties should be able to clearly distinct the difference between male and female. And it shouldn't even be a political issue, because it's a moral thing and it's a common sense thing. But despite whatever feelings or emotions or identity crisis one could be going through, there's always going to be major things that decipher male and female. And both parties should be able to see why it's necessary to have designated areas for both, and also to be able to reason with how dangerous it could be when one infiltrates the other. But that's really all I have. I appreciate the time, and thank you for all of your support.
Thank you, Jordy. And I do know Jordy has to get to practice, so if she needs to take off, go ahead. I'd like you to welcome Rebecca Alec.
Gotta adjust it a little bit. I'm a little tall. Hello, everyone. I'll be completely honest that the whole statement thing kind of makes me nervous. I've always done better off the cuff. And as we were walking through some of the people from supporting like having trans women in women's sports, it seemed like in their short opportunity of being in the presence of Governor Jim Pillen and of power, all they could resort to was hateful comments. So your one chance to talk to someone of power, you resort to hate. And I feel like that has just been the movement of the LGBT, of the trans community, with wanting women in sports and vice versa, is just full of hate. And I feel like just my message to the public right now, and if any of them even decide to listen to this, is that there's love for you. And as Jordy talked about, we were all created beautifully, purposely, and intentionally. And Charlie Kirk is someone who I like to listen to, and he talks to the college student body. They've always got very inspirational questions to ask him. And one of them he loves to just remind them is, what is a woman? And that seems to bring up so much agony in them, is you find that they found their identity in the world and not of God. And what's beautiful is that God gave us the definition of a woman. It is of femininity, it is of grace, it is of beauty, and just the caricature, I believe that's the word, of women, of just being able to nurture. As a proud Catholic, I pray often with my mother Mary and just her sacrifice of her body that a woman goes through with pregnancy. And I just believe that if more of the community would just dive into what our Lord has to offer, they would find peace and an identity. And I believe that when we look inward at who am I, because the devil has a beautiful way of twisting what is the truth. When Adam and Eve were in the garden, he never questioned was God real or not. He asked them, did God really say that? Did God really say that you were beautifully and purposely made? Did God really say you were born to be a man? Did God really say that you were born to be a woman? And yes, he did. Our God makes no mistakes. And I believe it beautiful that every single one of these souls is in here right now. And honestly, my heart just mostly breaks for the trans community, because I believe a lot of them resorted to that community was because people weren't listening when they were crying. People weren't listening when they were asking for help and were confused. The questions is not what God condemns us for, but is when we make those active decisions to defy him. And I think that as people, we can do a better job of just listening to one another. There's power in just being with somebody. It's not giving them all the answers. We have a creator who gives us the answers. And so I believe just as people and on the right side of history, we can do a better job of just being there for one another, loving them through it. We are not the harvesters, we are just the seed planters. And so just to be there for our brothers and sisters in Christ is where we can create radical change. The idea of separation of church and legislature is one of the biggest things that personally really pisses me off. Because we're missing the whole point. Without our church, without our God, who are we? You're telling me that I'm just a speck of dust in this entire universe? You're telling me that my combustion in my mother's uterus was an accident? I do not believe in such thing. I believe that each and every one of you that I get to look upon was purposely, intentionally, and beautifully made. And I believe that we are supposed to be there for one another and love one another and bring us back home, which is our heaven and home. So I just ask that we continue to pray for our brothers and sisters who feel lost and unloved and have found community elsewhere and are still wrapped in the arms of the devil, and that we just ask them to come to Jesus and just to ask more questions of, am I made for more? Is there more than me constantly having to go out in the street and protest? Is there more than me constantly having to define who I am in the mirror instead of looking to my Father for my answers? So, thank you.